Hi YouTube, it's Diane. I thought I would do some of the tags. I have my list here, so I'm going to be looking at that. The Stash Enhancement tag by the Stash Queen, Katie. Number one, what is your favorite pattern in your stash that you have not started, and why haven't you started it? There are two. One of them is this one that I purchased from Etsy. Queen Elizabeth II in her coronation dress. I'm trying not to get a glare. There we go. Oh, it's backwards. Nice. I got this from an Etsy shop, Teresa Cross Stitch Designs. I really love this. It's beautiful, beautiful. I have not started it because I haven't kitted all the floss. I'm trying to get a few other things done before I start this. I do have the fabric, so I did buy the fabric for it, but I haven't bought the all the flosses. The one thing it calls for in here is DMC Diamant Metallic. I've never used that. It's not my LNS had no clue what I was talking about. So that might be something that I order. I don't like DMC metallics in general. If I don't order it, I might substitute Treasure Braid or Krennic for it. We'll see what I do, but I really love this one because in her dress, when Queen Elizabeth was coronated, she asked the Needlework Society to, in her dress, stitch in the symbols of the British Empire, like Wales, and then there's the Canadian maple leaf in there somewhere, and Wales has I know there's a thistle and other leaves and some wheat to indicate the different areas that the British Empire governed at the time. I'm sure that's changed a little bit since then, but it's a beautiful, beautiful pattern. And there is some, what am I trying to say? To my knowledge, there's not specialty stitches in here, but there are layers of some of the floss. So some of the floss you use different amounts of strands to get that 3D effect. So I'm looking forward to stitching on her. I do have the fabric. I don't have the floss all gathered together, although I probably have all the DMC floss in my stash. But it also calls for Rainbow Gallery Whisper W88. I have that. But the diamant, the metallic diamants from DMC, I've never stitched with them. And they say, oh, DMC metallics are great, and my experience is they're not. So I might substitute something for that. But I'll wait until I get to that point before I worry about that. The other pattern for the Stash Queen is the Snow Queen by Heaven and Earth. This is the regular size one, but she is huge. She's 525 stitches by 719. She's huge. I figured I need a 36 by... I was looking at 36 by 43 is not big enough for this design. I would do it on 18 count Aida. I'm really liking 18 count Aida for my Hades. But she's just beautiful. Just absolutely stunning. And I look at her and she's just gorgeous. And for my birthday I was going to order from nenethomas.com one of her patterns, which is about that size, but it's epic. She calls them epic patterns. So I'm doing this in my room, so the lighting's not great, and I'm sorry, but it's a tag video. What's your favorite non-pattern item in your stash? That would probably be my Mighty Bright. It has the magnifier, and I love the lights when you use it because of how the light, it's got a flexible neck, and it's going to tip over here if I let go. There it goes. With all the LED lights around it, is when you have it on your project, you don't get a shadow. Or you can get a shadow. It's hard to get a shadow, and I couldn't do my Hades without that. I've decided that. Every time I do my Heaven and Earth, that has to be there. I don't usually use it for my other patterns. I do use the light, but I usually don't use the magnification part. But on my Hades, I do, especially on the chart parts where the symbols are really similar. It's definitely helpful. What do you have the most of in your stash? Patterns, floss, beads, etc. Probably patterns. I used to have a Stony Creek magazine subscription for years, so I still have all those magazines that I had. And I have a number. I've never done a stash video. I guess I could do that sometime. But I have a lot of mirabilias, a lot of lavender and laces. So yeah, patterns. I don't have a lot of fabrics in a stash. And floss, I have more DMC than anything. But my specialty fibers fit in just one of those plastic shoe boxes. Yeah, and I still have room in there. And then, of course, my Krennics. Let's see. Besides your LNS, where is your favorite place to purchase materials? I do go to Joann's and Michael's for DMC. Michael's will give me a 30% off your entire purchase coupon. And since the skeins are 40 cents, then 30% off of them, it's 28 cents. So I will do that. I'll stock up then. I do purchase some 18 count Aida from usually Michael's. I prefer their Aida over Joann's. But both of those stores have pluses and minuses in their different sections in the store. Although Joann's customer service definitely beats Michael's. Michael's doesn't even have customer service, in my opinion. And Joann's, except the one in Edina, Minnesota, they are very rude in that store. But the other Joann's that I've been in, very nice. Name one item not meant for cross stitch you repurposed. So when I found this on the blog, I asked in one of my videos what you guys use for Krennic, and then I showed you what I found for my Krennic. Oops, let me turn it around. And this is the Winchester 50 gauge ammo box. And it's fun to see on your videos. You'll say, oh, I forgot this. Mondot Stitches mentioned this. I'm glad it's helping you because it's definitely helping me. And I have one for my Krennics, number 4. It's not completely full. I actually have a few out in a few projects. This is just number 4 braid. Just my blending filaments. And just the oddballs. My number 8s, because lavender and lace uses a lot of number 8s. My number 12s, number 16, some Krennic cord, cable, Japan threads, and ombre. Some of these spools are, like this is the number 16 medium braid. They won't fit in here in the slots, so I just have it rolling around in the top. And then this one is the, oh, this is another 16. So the 16s don't fit in here. So I just have them rolling around the top. But I don't have an incredible amount of any one of those, so I just stuck them in one. And these are, at Cabela's, when I went, I mean, they're $4 a case. It works so nice. So, so nice. I'm so glad I found that on that blog. I wish I could remember the blog's name and give them credit for it. It wasn't my original idea. I did bring it to FlossTube, but it's a wonderful idea, whoever originally thought of it. Name one item that you were enabled to buy via FlossTube. And what haven't I in the last few months? I'd have to say definitely the Heaven and Earths. I have looked at them on and off through the years, but since watching FlossTube, I actually, and people showing how they did their Heaven and Earths, I actually had the courage to purchase them. And I have 6 that I've purchased, and I have a few of the freebies and a couple of the Mystic Stitches freebies that I have not started. What is the one must-have pattern that people should have? Oh, wow. That varies because people have such different tastes. I encourage people to try a sampler. And again, there are many, many, many different types of samplers. Some very primitive, some with a lot of specialty stitches, some with just cross-stitching, but try a sampler. And I encourage you to try something with some specialty stitches in it. Some designers that have specialty stitches. I have not stitched the Northern Expressions. It's on my wish list, but they have specialty stitches. Just Nan does a lot. Usually in her, particularly her angels, she has, I think, 16 angels. I have them all, and I've stitched them all at least once. Some of them I've stitched 4 or 5 times. They make great gifts, so they're pretty quick. Her angels have a few specialty stitches in them that add to the design. So that's, and I know she has samplers and other projects too that have specialty stitches. Stony Creek Magazine has a lot of specialty stitches. Their patterns, the burst samplers that I've done of theirs, there's usually 3 or 4 specialty stitches. The one that I have that's full of specialty stitches is by, I was going to say Pamela, but it's Patricia Ann Designs. It's out of print, unfortunately. Someone contacted me, they're interested in purchasing that pattern and trying to find it. But there's really not one must-have pattern, but I would encourage people to try specialty stitches at some point and try a sampler at some point. And there's a huge range in those 2 different arenas in the cross-stitch community. What one designer should people look at to enhance their stash? If I'm understanding this question correctly, it's similar to the one before. I agree with Stash Queen. Check out Etsy. There's a lot of different designers on there. The one thing that I'm nervous about on Etsy, though, is the copyright, because I go to one person's page. I know that pattern is from somebody else. It's hard to know who, chicken or the egg, who had the pattern up first. So, but I have purchased things from Etsy, and I've been very happy with my purchases. But a particular designer, a must-have designer. I don't know. I'm a Mirabilia fan, but I know not everybody's a Mirabilia fan. So I'll just throw out Mirabilia. I don't know if that would work for everybody. Then we have the Joy of Cross Stitching tag. I believe Sonia started this one. How did you start stitching? I stitched a few things on and off as a kid. But when I was in college, my sophomore year, my roommate was stitching something. And I thought, oh yeah, I did that years ago. And so we went to Pat, Mike, and Dave's, or otherwise known as Pomida. And that was pretty much it in the college town that we were in. And I picked up Precious Moments book, because that's what they had. And Precious Moments is nice to start stitching. They had an alphabet one that had these cute little animals, and then they had a few others. But I think Precious Moments is nice to start learning cross-stitching with, because it has big blocks of color. So you can start getting your X's looking right and getting your tension right, and just getting used to the terminology and different ways of stitching without a lot of confetti. To start, a beginner should not have a lot of confetti in their projects. Big blocks of color. And it's also nice to have blocks of color as a project those days that you want to stitch, but your eyes are tired because you were working outside or something. It's nice to have something that just has blocks of color that you don't have to concentrate on too much. Have you taught someone to stitch? Yes, I've taught some of my children to stitch. I've encouraged my mom to try cross-stitching, and she loves it. Outside of our family, I did a little class once, kind of walking through some cross-stitch techniques and some specialty stitches, and introducing some people to linen who had not done linen before. Do you watch TV, music, or quiet? All the above. Most often I'm watching TV. It's a noise in the background, because I stitch the best when my children are in bed, because they always want to see what I'm doing, or I know I can lay my scissors down and not worry about my little one running away with them. I never bead with my children around me. I fling my beads everywhere. cannot imagine having my children there. But I Netflix or FlossTube. I'm binge watching NCIS right now. So Organic Granny. Netflix has NCIS, the original, on Instant Watch or Watch Instantly or whatever that is. So if you're part of Netflix, you can get it. I've been binge watching that. Try and have something that I don't have to watch really closely, and since I've watched all those before, I can listen and then stop and look up when I need to. That's what I try and do. Music, or I listen to certain radio programs that I like, or sermons or something. I don't listen to a lot of books on tape. I have in the past. I should look at doing that again. And sometimes it's just nice to have quiet. I have 13 children. It is nice to have quiet. It's rare in my house, but it's nice. Let's see. I'm sorry, I skipped one. When you use a kit, which company do you like the best? I don't use a lot of kits, but I would have to say DesignWorks, because I don't know if I've ever done a Dimensions kit. I know there was a kit years and years ago that I didn't like because it ran out of floss. I don't remember what it was. But DesignWorks, I've been very happy with those kits right now. I purchased the Score New kit from Sweetheart Tree for a specific project. It had everything in it. I don't know if that's the kits you're thinking of, but a company or design specific kit. I'm doing one now, A Good Marriage by Lizzie Kate. They gave me so much floss. I'll have enough floss, to add to my stash. So I'm very happy with that kit. But I'd have to say DesignWorks, just because that's what I've used. I don't do a lot of kits. When I look at kits, though, I have gifted kits. And when I've given kits, I look for something that, when I look in the package, it doesn't look aged or anything. The floss is not all tangled in a one goopy mess. Why waste time sorting everything? Favorite designs to stitch. I like kind of the Victorian ladies, the big flowy dresses. I like samplers. I'll do primitives, but that's not a go-to for me. I'm not a landscape person. I'm not typically a bird person. Again, I will try all these patterns at some point, but my favorite my favorite designer of all time is Lavender and Lace, and she does the big flowy skirts and just the way they use color to give that feeling of dimension. It amazes me. It's one reason I like Mirabilia also. And Nora Corbet of Mirabilia, her mom was the designer for Lavender and Lace. She passed away a few years ago. Where do I get ideas or inspirations for projects? Well, right now FlossTube gives me probably too many ideas. But I can go to my local needlework store. I know what I like, and then I do try and look at different things, although I will admit FlossTube has kind of opened my eyes to different designers in different parts of that store. I don't go there very often, but I'll browse. How do you store charts? I just use a Sterilite thing to put my charts in. I don't do any binders or anything. At some point in time I might do something different, but that has worked for me. I love the Sterilite containers that have the latch. You have to hear it click. It's because then I know when I lift it, then not everything's going to go flying. Do you stitch for yourself or give to others? I usually give to others, but I'm getting more interested in stitching a few things for myself. But if I've never had somebody come, will you stitch this for me? I don't think I could do that. Unless it was something I was really interested in stitching. So even when I give something away, it has to be a pattern I like for some reason, otherwise I won't stitch it. When you take your stitching to appointments or outside the house, I assume is what this means, how do you carry your supplies? I've been using these zippy mesh bags for years. This one itself is probably 15 years old. They work great. They are not waterproof, but they are water resistant. As in, I've had this sitting on the table and something got spilled. I was able to pick it up quickly, wipe it off. Everything inside was fine. There was no moisture inside. I wouldn't say it was waterproof, though. And I try not to take, I don't think I'd ever go on a boat with my cross-stitching. But I have taken it to my kids' swim lessons, although they have a separate, you're away from the pool area, so I don't have to worry about splashing. But that's what I typically carry them in. Before I found those, I carried them in zippy bags. I love zippy bags. What do you enjoy the most about stitching? Somebody's mentioned, I don't remember who it was, but mentioned you're really creating a work of art. And I really like that. For me, it also is very relaxing. My husband has referred to it as my temperature gauge. When he's come home from work and I'm sitting there and I'm this doing pattern, he knows, okay, something happened today. And he'll, give me a few minutes and then try to figure out what's going on. Yes, I have been sent to my stitchy chair because I pushed too many buttons. He said, 15 minutes, I don't want to hear a word. And I was a totally different woman after that 15 minutes. I don't know what I was freaking out about, but if I'm, I don't know, where I should go in the pattern, I don't know. Then he knows I'm kind of bummed about something. But if I'm sitting there and just going along and, okay, I had a good day. So he calls it my temperature gauge. I think that was all her questions. Yeah. The Year in Review by D. Stitcher. Is the year going the way you thought? Outside of stitching, we've had hiccups. In my stitching, my rotation, I hadn't done a rotation before, and I had this master plan for my rotation, and I've thrown it out the window. But I've been accomplishing things, though. And I've tried new designers that I never tried before, and I've liked it. So I have to say, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. Have you learned anything new about yourself this year? Willing to try new things in stitching, new designers in stitching. The hand-dyed fabrics have intimidated me for years, but I ordered some during the Leon Day sale from Under the Sea Fabrics. Stalking the mail person until it gets here. The mail lady until it gets here. We have a female mail carrier, so she's our mail lady, which is not a derogatory term. But anything else I've learned about myself, that I can meet my goals in stitching, that, I don't know, I think I've been very realistic in my goals this year compared to what I've done in the past. But, yeah, I can try new designers and new things. Not to mention, I can actually do this YouTube thing, which really has surprised my husband. Have you learned any new techniques? The parking technique, the loop method from the front of the pattern, genius. Done some new stitching regarding specialty stitches. Some new ones of those. And just the rotation in general. I mean, I'm still having a rotation, but I did make changes to it. I talked about that in my last video. So I guess those would be my new techniques. What do you hope to accomplish for the rest of the year? Really getting some finishes under my belt. I'm one that I've never had as many whips as I have now. And just, again, keeping things realistic, keeping it real. And, again, getting some finishes so I can have some more new starts. Because I have several things I really want to start, but I want to get a few more finishes first. And I think that's all D's tag, yeah. The Teresa tag. Do seasons affect your stitching? Yes, in that there are certain times of the year I feel like stitching like a madwoman, and there are times of the year I feel like quilting like a madwoman. And as Sherry Burkett has said, if she could figure out how to stitch and quilt at the same time, she would do it. And I'm right there with her. I haven't figured out how to do both. But in general, I do stitch more in the winter than I do in the summer, just because there's less going on outside the house. But I have personally been affected by the seasonal affective disorder because of the lack of vitamin D. So in the winter, I up my vitamin D. I have my Light that has the natural bulb. That can really improve my mood. So I'll read by it. I'll just kind of have it around me, and I notice my mood is better. But in winter, because it's cold here in Minnesota, it's 35 below. I don't want to go outside in that. I don't want my kids going outside in that. So I have more time to stitch than the summer. But I think that's how it affects my stitching. Do you prefer to stitch with floor stand, lap stand, or in the hand? Oh, I was going to bring a project in. Maybe I have one in here. No, I don't. I stitch in the hand, and I have a towel here. So I am right-handed. What I mean when I say stitch in the hand is I use no hoop, no anything. I literally roll up my fabric and hold it in my left hand, and then I will stitch with my right hand. So it's more of the sewing technique stitching. I'm trying to figure out where the camera is on this thing. Sorry. So I keep looking all over. It's on my phone, and I don't normally record from my phone. But I usually use the sewing method. I like the sewing method. I will admit it does twist my threads a little more than other methods, and it's probably not as fast. But that's what I do probably 90% of my projects. The mirabilias I'm doing, most of the mirabilias I'm doing, the only thing I will not do in the hand are my haids, and I did try to do that. No, it was just too much fabric to deal with, especially since I usually start in the center, and with the haids I've been starting in the upper left corner, just too much fabric. But this is usually how. Okay, so I have my fabric, I have my project, and I'll roll to wherever I'm working, and then I'll roll back. At the end of stitching, I need to press my project really well from the back, and I often use a press cloth of some kind. But it's worked for me for 20 years, 25-ish years. So that's how I usually do it. I am using the scroll frames for my Heaven and Earths because they're just so, even my mini is big enough, and it's on Ada, that I like it on the scroll frame better than I do in the hand. I don't like to hold Ada in my hand. Linen and even weave I like to hold in my hand. Lap stand. And on my Heaven and Earth, I do use my floor stand. I just have a cheapy one from Michaels, and I adapted it like Traveling Stitcher showed in one of her videos, although I need to have my boys drill one more hole, so I have an option of making the arms. Okay, sorry, my phone cut out on me, and it's probably going to do it again. So lap stand. I don't have a lap stand. Hoop, Q-snapper in the hand, and I've never used Q-snaps, so I don't know how. I will use a hoop once in a blue moon, but I don't like to use them. Stitching light, yes, and I showed that in a previous tag, my Mighty Bright Light. I love that one. And it has a magnifier, which is our next question. I only use the magnification on the Heaven and Earths. The other ones, I'm good on those. But on the Heaven and Earths, I definitely have the magnification. Although I will admit I just bought a piece of 36 count. Never stitched on 36 count, so I might be using the magnifier on that too. One-handed, two-handed, or both. One-handed when I have it in the hand. Two-handed when it's on the scroll frame. I usually am stitching in my family room, and my husband's usually on his computer playing he likes World of Tanks, and a few others. So he usually is playing his game and I'm stitching. I prefer 32 count, and I prefer even weave. I've been stitching on a project with linen right now, and I forgot all the lovely schlubs that linen has. If I've lost my stitchy bug, how did I get it back? There have been times that I have not stitched, a newborn, extended illness. There was a time I was just quilting like a mad woman and not stitching. Get it back is really, floss tube really piqued my interest to get back into stitching more, because I was doing so much quilting, I wasn't doing a lot of stitching. When I travel, would I travel and stitch or home hobby? I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I don't do a lot. I don't do public transit and stuff, and to be honest, where I'm at physically in Minnesota, the public transit system, there is not one. But if I was actually in the cities, or in the middle of Duluth or something, I might take advantage of the public transit more. But I've taken my stitching a lot of places. I'm not afraid of leaving it at home. Or most of my projects are portable. Some of them are not. And I do try and have some portable projects, and then I realize there's some that are not going to be portable. But those are all the tags, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to cut out before my phone dies on me here. And thank you for throwing out these tags. And I have a couple of tags, or a couple of questions I'll put into a tag. It won't be very long, but I'm not doing it on this video. But I thank you for watching and subscribing, and I enjoy your videos, and I look forward to seeing other people answer these tags. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.